Good evening, brothers and sisters. Happy to be back for us to handle the subject at hand. Our theme music has changed just a little bit. Um, Nonetheless, we'll be discussing out of importance the second or the killing of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the second book. Because it's very, very important. We have to understand who the target is. Now, this takes a very careful study. We have to have a careful study on this. Because I don't think that people really know or understand that the key was the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was the ultimate key. And if you miss that, then you don't understand exactly what's going on. Malcolm was never a threat. It was always the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And it's important that we know that. This is very important. Because if we can understand this, then we can understand the whole evolution of the invasion and the infiltration before that. Because the nation was handled like a country was. If you look at other countries such as Ghana or Nigeria or the Congo with the killing of Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, you look at these individuals, America came in, first infiltrated the country, and then invaded it. So we have to understand that. We have to understand that there's no way around it. Because if we can get some understanding of that, then we'll understand the death of Minister Malcolm. Minister Malcolm, without question, Minister Malcolm was the heir apparent to the philosophy of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the teachings of Master Fard Muhammad. Because he believed it. He was the one individual who was serious about saving other people. Now, you judge a message by the person who's giving the message, and then you judge the spirit of the messenger by the concerns of that message. Can the vessel carry the same concerns? That's the question. Can the vessel carry that? Now, anytime there's a leader or leader apparent, or anytime you have this person to come forward to teach, to exact an example of a message, such as you had what the one they called Jesus, what Jesus did for Islam and what he did for Christianity. I have to say it that way because he himself was a Muslim, so I have to say it that way. But when you have a leader that comes in that fashion, then, and they speak the truth and the points, the convictions of that leadership or that religion, right? And harness the spirituality, it cautions people to either live better, right? Or it pushes them away. In Christianity, they use a term, they say that the truth will either draw you, right? It'll either draw you to it or push you from it. That's not only with Christianity. That's actually an African phrase that comes from Amenhotep. Would say it'll drive you or drive you away or draw you to it. But nonetheless, it challenges your living. And I think that's the key thing that we have to think about. Excuse me, brothers and sisters. I know you understand. I think that's the key thing that we have to think about is the purpose that the Nation of Islam was created. Because once we understand the reason it was created, then we can understand why they would want to destroy it. What were the pros of the nation? And what were the cons? Right? We have to be able to talk about that because every religion has pro and con. So we need to discuss those. What are the pros and what are the cons? Now, what the nation did was remove any kind of the nation removed any kind of self-doubt that an individual who once had self-doubt, who lived on the street, because self-doubt manifests itself in many forms. Someone who's a drug addict, someone who's a drunk. All of these things are the result of something. These behaviors or this emptiness, this longing is a result of something that was planted, right? As far as Black people are concerned, it answered the social disposition of Black people. It answered the stereotypes, right? It was an answer to those who had given up on life, were living immorally, doing whatever. It literally answered what was necessary to get them back on track, to get them to the place where they enjoyed life. And I think it's very important, and I hope that I can find it, but there are some things that Wallace Waradim Muhammad did that showed that he's inconsistent with the nation's teaching. Remember, he was put out of the nation because he brought in more negative energy than positive energy. We have to remember that. Wallace Waradim Muhammad was the eldest son of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, who felt threatened by Malcolm's presence. Because the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm shared a relationship that Wallace Waradim Muhammad wanted. Secondly, he was heir apparent. He wanted to be heir apparent to an organization that he didn't wholly accept. And he was the one that was concerned about the money. He talks about everyone else, but he was concerned about the money. As a matter of fact, the Al-Islam movement, or the American Islamic movement, that was started by Wallace Waradim Muhammad, was an organization that was given to him. It was literally set in his lap by the CIA and FBI. It was the second assassination, right, or the second evolution in the assassination of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Wallace Waradim Muhammad was the one that they were giving information to muckrack. He was the one pushing and passing all the information through it. You have to study to really know this. But he was the one. He gave the information to Minister Malcolm. Again, his colleague in that was Louis Farrakhan. They're talking about Malcolm showing them that's not true. That's not true, brothers and sisters. The fact of the matter is that they showed Minister Malcolm. And Minister Malcolm was disturbed by it. And this is proven. Malcolm's own words said it. And Wallace was the one that told Malcolm about the children. And the whole advantage of telling a story when one of the main characters is gone is that you could tell it whichever way you want. That's the same thing that's given to a writer, right? Writers given creative privileges. creative authorship, that if the other person isn't there that they're writing about, then from their own account, they can explain something. And we have no alternative in the life that it would be an epilogue of a real life individual or organization or a preface or forward. We have no alternative than to accept it, because this is one of the key players. Now, another key player was Minister Louis Farrakhan. Farrakhan was another player. And if you go listen to some of the, he's given several different explanations, which let you know that he's not thorough and certainly not a reliable source. Wallace Waradeen Muhammad is who he's speaking of. But he did validate what one of Farrakhan's chief representatives and bodyguards, FOI, told the media in, I believe it was in the 80s. I think it may have been 86. And then a few years after Minister Malcolm was killed, this barber that had taken some pictures came to give the pictures back to him and told him, say, hey, I want to show you a picture of yourself. So we don't exactly know what was going on, but we can say that some things were happening that were beyond control. And he says very plainly that he was afraid of Louis Farrakhan, because Farrakhan, they were calling Malcolm the chiefest hypocrite and all of that. And they killed the brother. They didn't have to kill him, but they did kill him. And Farrakhan not only took part in assassination and organized an assassination, he even spoke to the atmosphere and how convenient it would be for Wallace to be out at that time. But see, this was a two-part evolution. Wallace was working with the federal government to bring the second evolution of it. He couldn't be there in the initial happenings because he was the one to take over the nation, so they had to leave him clean. And what does he do when he take over the nation? Soon, what does he do? He start American Islamic movement. Louis Farrakhan can no longer follow him when he does that, so he stay with the Nation of Islam, which was an organization that was organized. All that was organized by the CIA and the FBI. And so when the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad turned it over to him, he didn't expect, because he started to give him the reins, because they were taking over and overpowering the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad anyway. They were overpowering him. And I keep bringing up this real Lifetime video, and it would tell a lot, where Farrakhan and the rest of them are trying to push the Most Honorable Elijah down in the seat. They're trying to push the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad down in the seat, and he was standing against them. They couldn't even push him down, but they were trying to pass the notion that he was sick. Now, I also told you that Farrakhan says that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was assassinated, and that's true. He would know that. But also Wallace would know it, and I believe that Wallace played a big part in the assassination of his father. And there were brothers and sisters around that aided him in that, but he was the chief spokesman for the nation at that time, and then the chief hypocrite and the chief agent used by the federal government to change the format of the Nation of Islam. He went against every rule that his father had. Literally went against every rule, which says that he was a rebellious son. Also, Master Fard Muhammad told him that Wallace was going to do that. And his name was Wallace Warith Deen Muhammad. Warith means fight, quarrel with thee. Right? He's deemed to fight. And that's what he did. And a liar. He lied against the messenger. He lied and said he talked to Master Fard Muhammad. All these things are lies. And we have to know it because everything he says is inconsistent. What he says is inconsistent with what he initially said. Also, if he was really for the Nation of Islam, why would he take over the leadership of the Nation of Islam and then dismantle it 2 years later? Because that's what he did. That's what he was doing. Now, I want you to know that Minister Farrakhan did the same thing, or is doing the same thing. First, he started out with the new Nation of Islam, then it's changed back to Nation of Islam once Waridin Muhammad opens up the Al-Islam movement or the American Islamic movement. But what's important to note is that, and this has happened simultaneously in 65. I want to go back to 65. When Minister Malcolm is shot, Benjamin Goodman, Benjamin 2X, the one they call Kareem, he went back into the Nation of Islam. And I wonder if anybody missed that. Did you study it to know it? That once everything happened, he went back into the Nation of Islam. And I always thought that was strange that he would go back into the not that I don't love the nation. I love the nation. But the fact of what he did and that he would go back in there after he was supposed to be an ally with Minister Malcolm. What job was he put in there for is the question. What job did they put him in there for? We have to ask ourselves these questions, brothers and sisters. We have to ask ourselves these questions. There are too many people in the black community that are getting away with killing our people. I mean, they're just getting away with it. So much so that they can do anything because they already know that you're going to forgive them. So we have to ask ourselves the question, like what was Benjamin really doing there? And another thing too, he was a forerunner for Minister Malcolm in the sense that he had to speak. But as soon as he finished, he goes in the back. He takes the young lady in the back. J67X go in the back as well. Now, 67X began to work with the police department and FBI and all of that. And that's a whole nother story because he has a lot of blood on his hands. We have to know this. We have to know it. So it looked like a coup d'etat, or not just a coup d'etat, but it looked like an assassination and a Judas operation. That's what it looks like. So while we're on the subject, brothers and sisters, don't forget to support. I want to make sure that I put this in here, support. And here's the thing. This is not easy to talk about. And not a lot of our people could care less. A lot of our people could literally care less. But what you need to understand is no matter what organization it is, we'll never get it off the ground if we keep having Judases. And that's the main thing I want to tell you tonight, because I'm not going to hold you long. If we want to get rid of the Judases around us, we've got to stand up. We've got to take a stand. We've got to take a stand. If we're going to get rid of the Judases around us, we have to take a stand. You know, I say this all the time. We can't blame the white man. Can't blame the white man for damaging us if we damage one another. We can't blame him. We have to do something about Judases that come within our community and disrupt who are agent, provocateurs, coward, and eavesdroppers that will take information back to the enemy so the enemy can use against us. We've got to get wiser than that. We have to get wiser than that. And just so you know, if an organization is inspired by a leader and that leader is changed or that rank is changed, then you'll see the death of an organization. What Farrakhan has today is not the Muslim movement. Now, Silas Muhammad or Silas Muhammad has a movement that is the teaching of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's in Houston. But Farrakhan is letting these white people into the Nation of Islam. That's not the teaching of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I'm just being plain with you, brothers and sisters, because I have to tell you, because if I don't, you won't know it. Farrakhan is doing all these little bitty things. And the only thing I'm saying is this: you don't have to be racist, but stay true to what you say. Stay true to what you say. He jumps around too much. Then he give you some religious doctrine to bag it up, and you buy it. You keep it. It's time out for that, brothers and sisters. It's time out for that. You've got to get stronger and wiser. You've got to get better. You've got to get more intelligent in this day and time, because if you don't, and I'm just telling you, if you don't get intelligent, this world will gobble you up and spew you out. So you got to get intelligent in this day and time. God is calling you today to separate the right from the wrong. As the old folks say, he's going to move all over this land. Nothing but the righteous will be able to stand. He's going to separate the right from the wrong someday. And speaking of wrong, Wallace was on the wrong course. He lied. He was a criminal minded. And he never liked Master Fard Muhammad. See, this stuff has to be told. Wallace Waradeen Muhammad, the oldest son of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, never liked Master Fard Muhammad. He never liked him. That has to be told. That has to be told. And that's something that we don't do. That's something that we don't do. If something happens that involves one of us, we hate to deal with it. We've got to deal with it. We'll be dealing with the killing of Minister Malcolm for a long time. And I want to tell you this too. Everyone they said was involved in the killing of Minister Malcolm was involved. Now, how come we don't know the incidents of what happened to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad? Shouldn't we know the incidents of his death? I'm just asking a question, brothers and sisters. Should we not know the incident of a man that created an organization that the U.S. government says a threat? But while they were distracting us with Minister Malcolm, then they could come at the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and weaken him to the point that they eventually would kill him. And he fought for 10 long years, because Minister Malcolm was taken from us on February the 21st, 1965, and it's not until the next February, 10 years later, on that February, 10 years later, February I believe it was the 23rd, 1975, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was taken away from us. Somebody saying, brother, why are you saying taken away? Because that's what it was. He was taken from us. He was taken from us. And in this investigation, you have to know that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the key to keeping the Nation of Islam afloat. That's why Farrakhan has to reference his name. Farrakhan is not being a Muslim in the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He's not. I don't know what he's teaching, but he's not teaching Muhammad. He's teaching some part of Scientology, some part of the mother plane, and then another part of the Dianetics. I'm just being honest with you, brothers and sisters. I'm not going to be before you long today, because the main thing was to finish, for you to know that Elijah Muhammad was the key. Elijah Muhammad was the target. He was the target. There were no other targets. He was the only target, because he was the one carrying the organization on. We have no idea why Wallace would say that Master Fard Muhammad came to him and apologized. We have no proof of that. And this gentleman was, Master Fard Muhammad was consumed with the Nation of Islam This is something he created as a doorway for black people to find their way back to God. And you have to admit, brothers and sisters, we've gotten away from God. You have to admit that we've gotten away from God. We don't know where God is. We don't even know who he is anymore. And that's a shame, because the scripture said, how can you say you love me whom you never seen, but hate your brother whom you see daily? We are God. We are the representation of God. That's why it says that. Right? That teaching came from a Millitip. That where I am, you should be also. In my Father's house, there are many mansions, right? That comes from Imhotep. That where I should be, you should be also. The works that I've done, you should do greater things, right? The Yahuwah Ashur Leah Asa repeated that, right? Come on, brothers and sisters. We got to wake up. We have to wake up in this time period. And we don't have long. You and I don't have long in this time period to wake up, because God is putting everything back into our hands. And we have to be ready to receive this. We got to be ready to receive it when God put it in our hand. Right? What the song says, he's going to move all over the land. Only the righteous will be able to stand. He's going to separate the right from the wrong someday. And then he says, what? Will you be ready? So will we be ready? For our Savior has come. But with the instruction that we have, will we be ready to build our own business and do for self? That's the hub of the teaching. Stop asking the white man to do something for you that you could do for yourself. You could do these things for yourself. You see, and what happens when the black man begins to do things for himself? He's not working in the white man's factory. He's not in his house. He's not in his yard. He's not in his bedroom. He's not in his kitchen. And you have to understand that. And that don't seem powerful, but it is the most powerful thing, that if you run an independent business, you're dependent on yourself. That's self-wealth. That's wealth pooled in one source. If you set up another business, then that's the more business in your community, and you control the dollars in your community if you do that, brothers and sisters. And that's what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was saying. So he raised up more stores and more businesses, more temples than any other black man on the planet. Is that right or wrong? And this was the most organized religious militia that you could find on the planet. And to this day, it still has some organization. But since the death of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, seems that the vigor and the inspiration went right to the grave with him. Brothers and sisters, we got to be careful, because we've got literally brothers and sisters who have a single motive, and their single motive is to take advantage of you. It's not to help you live righteous. It's not to remind you to be righteous or anything like that. And a lot of them fall back listening to their parents. We got to be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of God. Every time we turn around, we should be in God's work. We should be doing his will, brothers and sisters. That was the teaching of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. How threatening was this to America? You get black men off the street, that's a soldier. You get a black lady off the catwalk, that's a soldier. Turn her into a legitimate woman, she began to have babies. That cuts down on the system, the welfare system. You get the young black male out of there, it cuts down on the prisons. Right? So I challenge Baird Rustin. Of course, he's not here anymore. But when he said that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad didn't have a plan, of course he had a plan. His plan was to get black people off the streets, make them believe in themselves, organize them to do something for themselves. That's a program. That's a plan. That's a program, and that's a plan. So we got to be, again, steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of God. What is God's work? That we feed the hungry, clothe the naked, Give sight to the blind. Make the dumb talk and the lame walk. Isn't that right? Well, that's a physical thing, but it's also a spiritual thing. That somebody could be lame in the mind. They could be crippled in the mind. They may not know how to walk in the mind. You can teach them that. Teach them how to walk. Teach them how to talk. Isn't that right? So that people will look and say, hey, wasn't he dumb? That man, every time I saw him, he wasn't talking about anything. Just making a bunch of noise. But now something's different about that man and that woman. They walk different. They talk different. Why? These are allegorical terms, right? Spiritual terms. For people who may not have been, not to say there weren't any people that have been sick, because that healing is real too. But to heal the mind for people who didn't believe in themselves, who wanted change, but needed to hear the voice change. That's what the most honorable Elijah Muhammad was and is, the voice of change. Minister Malcolm was the voice of change. But if you're going to kill Muhammad, if you're going to successfully kill him, you got to do two things. You got to discredit his name. Then you got to kill his chief minister. And this got to be an all hands on deck deal. Because you had some FBI and CIA agents in there that had come to kill Minister Malcolm. The FBI and the CIA had infiltrated in an organization called COINTELPRO. Infiltrated the organization to come in and kill him. So, brothers and sisters, that's what I have. If they kill Minister Malcolm, they stop the #1 lieutenant in the Nation of Islam. The report will go down. When they leaked Minister Farrakhan and Wallace Muhammad and John Ali and Captain Joseph leaked the personal business of the Honorable Minister, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who had done no wrong, because Muslims can marry 2 women. So he had done no wrong. But I say this, once the news that went out and the way that they explained it, they laid it right in Malcolm's lap. Laid it right in his lap. Took the business of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Misrepresented what was going on. Malcolm's dedication was of such nature till he wanted to talk about it and see if it's true. Because he knew what was going on. He knew that men were jealous of him and everything. And you can marry in the nation. So the real issue in research between the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was the killing of Russell Stokes. That was the real issue. Other than that, the CIA and FBI had ministers in there heaping up other stuff. The whole police going down to the LA mosque and jumping them in that mosque was a setup for Malcolm too. The government has implications in this death, but they're working right along with infiltrators in the Nation of Islam that is there to stop the organization that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had made, that Wallace said that he couldn't fully accept. He said, I can't accept Master Fard Muhammad as being God. He couldn't fully accept it. So let's think about that. Let's think about that as we go into this research. Let's think about it. Keep that in mind. Minister Malcolm was never the target. I say that over and over again. And if you think that he was the target, you're out of your mind. This thing was between Wallace and his dad and the CIA, and Malcolm was used by Wallace, Farrakhan, and his emotions got the better of him. He was still loyal to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, But with these lies, that's what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to get Wallace emotional. And you and I both know when you're emotional, there's not much you can do. Can't do much emotional. Not much you can do if that happens, because you can't do much emotionally. When you're stressed, anything you're trying to do, if you got something else on your mind, you can't give it your full attention. And this was Malcolm's trouble. That he had the most honorable Elijah Muhammad in front of him. He had the most honorable Elijah Muhammad in front of him. And yet, he sought to, he looked at him as the holy messenger, and he expected a committed life, which there was a committed life. But when Malcolm looked at it, he looked at it as if a minister in a Christian movement. So there was a lot of personal things and expectations that Minister Malcolm had that was sort of cast. It was sort of unspoken. It was sort of unspoken. It was cast out there, but it was unspoken. So here, Minister Malcolm, if we can think about it psychologically, had lost his father. His mom had been taken away from him and put in an institution. Father was killed again. Was thrown on a train track and was literally severed his head and his body. Malcolm don't have his mom. He's put into a foster home where he's degraded. He goes to his school where he's degraded. After that, he said, look, I'm not going there anymore. I'm getting out of school. There's nothing in there for me. Because when the teacher asked Malcolm, said, what do you want to be? Malcolm said, I want to be a lawyer. He said, come on, Malcolm. He said, it's not the job for a real nigger. He said, you're a good nigger. Everybody like you, but said, it's not a real job. Malcolm said was done with school. So the negativity was already festering. You have to understand the mindset. His father, being, as far as he knew, as a child, an upstanding man, and I have to say that because none is perfect. None is righteous but the Father. The rest of us are just striving to be. Also, when you look at the home setting that he came in, his father was a self-made man. It was a do-for-self mentality. You're talking about Garveyism, right? Marcus Garvey. Garveyism. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad himself was a Garveyite. You're looking at something that's already planted, a seed that's planted, but had not come up. It wasn't the season for the seed to come up. When you plant a seed, you got to take care of it, right? Make sure no weeds or anything else is around. Water it real good so that it will get those things, seed will develop, and it will come up. Well, while the seed began to bud is when he got into prison. He said, we got to find something else. We can't be doing this. He told his friend Shorty Long, we can't be doing this. We got to cover something else. He worked with Red Fox on the train before he got in trouble. He was making money going back and forth, right? When he was at his sister Ella Little Collins' house, he was riding the train, right, as a server. Is that right, brothers and sisters? When he goes into the streets, he still commanded a type of presence. He just wasn't in the right atmosphere. But there was nowhere he went that he didn't put himself all the way into whatever he was doing. And understand, he comes from a religious background. So when he comes out, when Minister Malcolm comes out of that, off the street, off the drugs and all that, he's going into prison. Say, I got to study. He goes to study. Say, hey man, if we study, we can get out of here, right? But in the course of reading these books, he begins to get a conviction. And then his brother visits him and tell him about this religion, beautiful religion called the Nation of Islam, organized by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, taught by Master Fard Muhammad. And when this happened, brothers and sisters, it began. Now Malcolm has a vehicle. He has a place to express his gift and to do all of his study. And he's all too happy to do it. And really, he didn't want to lead anyone. He was happy with his duty with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was happy with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad being the supreme master, supreme leader, supreme messenger. Let that sink in for a while. So we see that the guidance was still given by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Isn't that right? The guidance was still given by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So if a ship is on water and you want to sink that ship, the first thing you'll do is go to the below deck, the bow of the ship, and knock a hole in it, right? And then after that, you already got the captain. Because the only thing he can do is guide the ship. But he can't guide a ship that's sinking. Isn't that right? So what they wanted to do was strike a mighty blow to start the ship from overflooding. Started overflooding with water. Once they did that, they could go and manipulate the captain. Take over the ship. Isn't that what pirates did? Take over the ship, use what's necessary, and then get off and use it. Right? Get off and just leave the ship. It's no more good to them because it's sinking. So it had to be repaired. This is where Louis Farrakhan comes in. The CIA and FBI told him, said, look, you create the American Islamic movement and you create the new nation of Islam. Because Farrakhan and Wallace Waradeem Muhammad had begun to fuss. Right? And they did this before the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad died. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that Farrakhan reminded him of a worm. This is the truth. He said that his son Wallace was always behind some trouble that he had to get him out of. He had got so wayward that there was nothing else he could do for him. Nothing at all that he could do. We won't get into the interdisciplinary problems or interdisciplinary problems associated with that, but what we will say is father and son was having a time. You had a rebellious older son who caused trouble within the nation, had help from the FBI and CIA. Another CIA agent was Farrakhan, Chief Joseph, National Press Secretary John Ali, used by the federal government. Used by the federal government and paid. And once they came inside the nation, right, many of them started living high off the hog, as old folks say. Isn't that right? So if a man has a car and you're going to take that car, you don't go to the passenger side. You go into the driver's side. Isn't that right, brothers and sisters? So you can get the car. If you go just to the passenger, you're wasting your time. You may open the door, the passenger's door. That is a part of the car. That's how you get in the car. But in order to get the car, you have to get the one with the keys. In order to sink a ship, you have to create a situation where the pilot of that ship or the captain of that ship is compromised, right? Well, there's nothing he can literally do. When they started this trouble in the nation, there was nothing that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad could do, literally. Nothing that he could do. And not only that, they were continuously lying on him, just like Wallace is. Well, he's not lying anymore because he's gone. But you look back in the reels, Wallace Muhammad was lying on his own dad. That was his job. He was paid by the CIA and FBI, COINTELPRO. We're going to talk about that later on. But he was paid to do that, to destroy his dad's vision, destroy his dad's work, and just destroy his father, period. Where people would see trouble going on between the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but they wouldn't see, and Minister Malcolm, but they wouldn't see the people carrying the message. So we have to be wise, brothers and sisters. more today than we've ever been in our life. We have to be wise. So we'll know exactly what's going on. We've got to pay attention to these events that are opening in front of us. Now, the Nation of Islam under Farrakhan is not a real Nation of Islam, not even run like a real Nation of Islam. And they're busy defending whites. If you look in there, look in the Nation of Islam, you have so many white people in there now that have had children with black Muslims. So it's integrated already. The minute that Farrakhan's son, right, Joshua Farrakhan, had a baby by a white woman, it was already compromised. And this was on purpose. This was on purpose. But you got to know. You have to know these things. I looked at tonight, did research and studied on Wallace Waradeen Muhammad. Also, Malcolm's right-hand man, Earl Grant, was a good brother. He was a good brother. Another loyal man to Minister Malcolm X was Farrakhan's chief lieutenant in 1963 to 1965. He wouldn't do anything to Malcolm. No matter how much they tried to get him to do it, he wouldn't do it. There was a picture taken of him and Minister Malcolm where the brother said that he burned the picture up because he knew Farrakhan and the rest of them were dangerous men, killers. So he burned it up. He swore before Allah that he burned it. Then you got the news reporter, Haggins. He's a good brother. He's a good brother. He was Malcolm's photographer. Malcolm photographer. He was a good brother. He fought for Minister Malcolm. He made sure that the pictures, and being Malcolm's photographer, he made sure that he would take these pictures and sort of make some kind pictures of Malcolm, sort of catch him in this human character, because he'd already been relegated, right, or revelated or explained as a fire breather, when that wasn't the question. All they had to do was look at the work that he was doing, but the white man is hypocritical. So instead of crediting Minister Malcolm for being able to put his finger on the problem, they started expressing the guilt complex. Start using the guilt complex. They were guilty about what they done, what their original sin was, putting us in captivity, misusing us. And instead of repenting to God for their original sin, to this very day, the white man will not do that. He continues to mistreat us. And that's what he's building young people that won't be afraid to die, but also won't be afraid to kill. Malcolm's photographer, Robert Haggins. It's good to look him up. To look up Robert Haggins. That would be real good. It'd be good to look up Malcolm's loyal aide and ally, Earl Grant. Earl Grant has a whole lot to say. He has a whole lot to say. And they don't let anybody off. You also need to listen to the other agent, Wallace Waradeen Muhammad, an agent for sure. Listen to him, and he talks in circles, but from that you'll be able to see that he's still working for the FBI, the CIA. There's a lot of things that he's not saying. He'll often say, "Well, I don't know this, I'm thinking." But when he lays it out, you can tell that he was one of the planners for the downside of the Nation of Islam. All you have to do is pay attention and watch his nonverbal behavior, and you'll be able to find it out. Brothers and sisters, I'm happy to do this show. I know some of you haven't seen it. Some of you won't see it, but some of you will. And but I am happy to do it, to be on time. We're leaving a little early now. But nonetheless, I'm thankful to be able to do these shows, because it's important, brothers and sisters, for us to do these shows. That's very important. Because if we don't figure this stuff out, if we don't figure out what is happening to us, in our organization, they'll be able to come in and divide any of our organizations. The desire of the devil is to kill, steal, and destroy. So we don't want to be divided going into the promised land. We're going into the promised land, but we don't want to be divided. And God is opening a door. All you have to do is look. Everything is being turned over to the black man. You have been made free because you used to be in chains. You used to be under ruthless colonialism or slavery in America, which is today colonialism. You left the plantation to go straight to the school. Not because the white man wanted you to, but you went there because your people had nothing to lose. Our ancestors had nothing to lose. Our grandparents, great-grandparents had nothing to lose, and they were going to fight to either to open up a school or to get us to the public school. But we are wrong if we don't rebuild our own society. Get out of their schools so we can build our own. So that you and I will be able to stand, brothers and sisters, as independent people, an independent nation, doing for self. When you look at the Mexican is opening up his own community. He's being taught that by his minister. He's been taught that. When you look at the Arab, they're opening up their own community. Their imam at the mosque is teaching them that. You look at the Catholics, they own their own stores and everything else. They're opening up their own community because they're being taught that. White people, they got their own community. The Asians got their own community. And we've got to have our own. We've got to control our own and spend money where we are. Educate our children on what's happening in the community. Tell them about their history. Guide them as they go forward and be counselors to them, because you and I will not pass until the day comes that this nation erupt in blood, which will rise to the horse's bridle. That's right, brothers and sisters. We got a ways to go. We got some work to do. Stop looking for a lily white Jesus to come out of the sky to help you. Jesus will not be back to help you. He's already given you the message that you should have to do for self. No matter where you are, you already got the message to do for self. Now the only thing that you got to do is go on in faith, because God has already answered, brothers and sisters. God has already answered. And when God says it, that settles it. So we have to get on God's side so that God will be on our side. Isn't that right? I want to read something to you. I know we're in the month of Ramadan. I want to read something to you. All right. This is from the message to the black man. Make sure that I read this to you, brothers and sisters. The time of prayer and its meaning. Note, the morning star is of two parts. The finest part called fard in Arabic, and the other part called tradition, and it's made obligatory. The morning prayer being obligatory is called fard, meaning early morning. It's going to read a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to let you go. The great Mahdi has taken fard as a name for himself, corresponding with the time of his coming, which is in the early days of years, or 7,000 years. The early morning is the first part of the 7,000 years, and the year under the name millennium, which Christians say means the 1,000 years Christ will reign on the earth. This is the 1,000 years which it will take to restore peace and honor after removal of peace breakers. The time is also includes the birth of a new nation from the mentally dead. However, the name fard fits the content. We are reminded that this prayer is made obligatory. It is also binding upon the believer, Muslims, and Allah, God, to obey him. For in that 1,000 year of the millennium, the disbeliever will cease to be, and those who will live in that time, it shall be binding upon them to serve and obey one God. Fard Muhammad, the great Mahdi, or Allah in person. The Mahdi must restore the kingdom of Islam, and he must weed out from the kingdom of Islam all disbelievers. This he will do in his time. Finally, Fard is a name many of the scholars have said is not one of the 99 attributes, but still it is a name that is self-independent and one which means that the believers are obligated to obey. We can see clearly why he took his name Fard for himself. Brother, if you can believe, sister, if you can believe that a white Jesus will come in a black area, guide his people, if you can believe that, I don't understand why you can't believe that from amongst us can come a deliverer to deliver his people. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? That's why the white man said, if you got one drop of black blood in you, you're black. Not that blood is black or white, but my point is simply this, is that the vernacular that's being used in the oppression and the disposition of the black man, even the language, the philology of it, was created by the white man. So when you get black people that are coming to do something for black people, it's only a problem because the less oppressive you are, then the more you can do for yourself. The less you're under the grip of the white man, the more you can do for yourself. You have to understand that. And the most horrible thing, the most dangerous thing for anyone to do, the most dangerous thing is for them to think for themselves when they're in oppression. So brothers and sisters, that's all I have for you. I ask that God will bless you. I love you. I say in the beginning, I say to you, Assalamu alaikum. May the peace of God be with you. Assalamu alaikum.